fans, welcome into the Green 19 podcast from JS Online and PackersNews.com. I'm Kassidy Hill, joined as always by Tom Silverstein and Ryan Wood. As you can see, Ryan and I here at Lambeau Field. Spoon still on IR, but coming in tonight for what is now, we know, the Packers' last game of the season, falling 20-16 to the Detroit Lions. Guys, this game, we knew before kickoff that the Lions' playoff chances were over. The Seattle Seahawks beat the Los Angeles Rams in overtime. You had to think, or at least I thought, that would maybe change things a little bit for the Lions' mindset. You know, what's it worth? You don't want to get hurt. If anything, we almost saw the opposite. We saw a team that was motivated, a team that was fired up versus a team that just wasn't. An offense that reverted back to some of their bad habits from earlier in the season, a defense that definitely reverted back to some bad habits after several weeks of shutting down some of the best receivers in the NFL. We're giving up, pretty much anything Jared Goff wanted to do. Spoon, I'm going to start with you. What was sort of your biggest takeaway for what led to the Packers' 20-16 loss to the Lions, thus ending their 2022 season?
Well, so I picked them to win, and I thought they would win. I do think the Lions having nothing to play for probably opened things up for them where they had no pressure. Mm-hmm. So there was nothing for them to lose in that game, and they played like it. They didn't panic. They when they got in some short yardage situations, they had great plays, scheduled. They weren't afraid to go for it. I thought the Packers looked tight. But more than anything, I just thought the Packers were exactly who they've been all season long. They're flawed offensively. We've known that. We've been waiting to see some kind of, offensive dominance, and it just never occurred. And that's where they lost the game. The defense played good enough to win. Goff had a drive, and they made a few plays that were really dumb, but, 20 points should be enough to win a must-win game, holding a team to 20 points. And this game was completely on the offense, and I think it spoke to everything that has gone wrong this year.
Aaron Rodgers actually mentioned that in his post-game press conference about how this was like the team that they were before the 4-game winning streak. There wasn't a big play on special teams. The defense got worn down as the night went on. The offense couldn't find a rhythm. Cassie, I am going to push back on what you said, though, about the Lions being fired up. I don't think the Lions were fired up at all the first half of the game. They came out really flat. To me, where this game got lost, the Packers controlled the entire first half, and they look up and it's 9-6. Mm-hmm. And anyone that watched last year's playoff game, and that was my thought at halftime, I tweeted it at the time, feels a lot like that. It was the same type of situation where they controlled the game in the first half and should have led by much, much, much more. They left so many plays, so many points on the field. First and goal on the opening drive, you settle for a field goal. Mason Crosby was money down the stretch. He made some really tough kicks, didn't get the doink on a 53-yard field goal, which would have been big. Aaron Jones, the biggest one, the fumble. He had 5 fumbles this season, career high. Lost 2 of them in the last 4 games. None of them bigger than at the end of the half, where it's 9-3 and they're in field goal range. They're going up 2 possessions, at least if they don't get a touchdown. Get a really nice cushion there that they deserve to have. They put themselves in position for that. You fumble, and then it's 9-6 instead of 12-3. Huge swing in the game. The Lions, to me, were flat, and if you pounce on them early, you can take them out because it's cold and they got nothing to play for. But you did it. They didn't take the opportunity they had in that first half. Then the Lions started getting belief, and you saw their offensive line wear down the Packers' defensive front in the second half, which is what they're built on, that offensive line. So I think that what happened before the game probably had a little bit of effect and opened the door a little bit. But, Spoon, to your point, as soon as the door was open for the Lions again, they walked right through, and they were not tight.
We saw now 2 games this season against the Lions where, to your point, the Packers offense was able to move the ball decently well in the 20 and then, gets into the red zone or gets, inside the 25, even in a goal to go situation, and can't capitalize. we've talked over the past couple of weeks about how Aaron Rodgers hasn't had to be quote unquote Aaron Rodgers to make this offense efficient. But tonight, did he have Spoon? I know you said a lot of it's on the quarterback. Was that the biggest difference maker? Was this one of those nights where Aaron Rodgers did have to take over and just didn't?
Yeah, absolutely. And he missed some throws that, I mean, the interception that he threw when he threw to Aaron Jones, that's like a third grade interception. It's like, how did he not see that safety coming in on Aaron Jones? And it was a bad ball anyways. Aaron Jones was open. There wasn't really a great ball he threw all night. I thought the one to Christian Watson, the deep ball, Christian Watson made a heck of a play to come back and get that ball and get up. Even the one to Lazard for the touchdown was this close from being deflected. I just didn't think he looked very good. It just reminded me of every game they've lost here, in the playoffs, where you're expecting great things from him to take the offense to the next level, and he couldn't do it. And it's not all his fault. The Jones fumble was the killer.
Mm-hmm.
AJ Dillon had a drop, but when he needed to hit Dobbs on that slant that would have kept the drive going, he threw it in the ground. I don't know. I don't know if it's injury or if his play has declined that much, but that's what the Packers are going to be studying soon. And if they haven't already made a decision on his future.
As Spoon said, there were a few drops. So there were a couple moments that weren't on Aaron Rodgers. With those drops, Ryan, we saw them across the board. So it wasn't just the rookie Romeo Dobbs. There were also some with Dillon. There was a weird one with Lazard. How much of that is the cold? How much of that is learning to play in the cold? Or is that just something that some of these guys have to get through and work through?
There's going to be drops. I think we need to keep it here on Aaron Rodgers. If you look at it from a 30,000-foot view, you see a theme. You see a trend. A year ago, games on his shoulder. The defense played lights out against San Francisco. It's a game that they're asking their quarterback to lift them the way that he's done so many times in the past, and he just couldn't. Tonight was the same way, other than one drive. And I thought that he turned back the clock in that third quarter touchdown drive. He hit the bomb to Christian Watson, who made a tremendous catch. When we talk about drops, he made one of the catches of the year, a tremendous catch. And the touchdown, for me, watching it live, I was stunned at how on time Aaron Rodgers was. I mean, he executed the play action fake. He quickly diagnosed and saw Allen Lazard, didn't waste any time getting rid of the ball, put the ball where it needed to be. It was a good throw. He did everything right on that play. But those type of plays have become so much fewer, so rare, that it's almost a jolt when it happens. Like, oh, that's what it used to look like. It doesn't look like that with consistency anymore. And we're talking about multiple years now in which he's not been able to lift this team the way that he has in the past. He's 39 years old. Next year, he's going into his age 40 season. You want to talk injuries? Okay, that might be part of it. Usually, quarterbacks go into their age 40 season, don't all of a sudden get healthier. That's not the way that the trend works. So that could be part of it too. But thematically, the 30,000-foot view, this is a quarterback who over 15 years, 4 MVPs, was able to put the team on his back in a way that at no point this season did he do. Even in the 4-game winning streak, it wasn't because Aaron Rodgers was lighting it up the way that he did in 2016. He said after the game that he feels like it's still there. He feels like he can still do it. We haven't seen it. He hasn't shown it. So if it's there, it hasn't come out. And usually at this point in a quarterback's career, if it hasn't come out, if it's not coming out, it doesn't all of a sudden start coming out again.
Let's flip to the other side of the ball, though, with the defense.
Well, can I add one thing to that, Kassidy?
Absolutely.
I think the shine has come off Matt LaFleur as well. I mean, they could never solve their goal line issue.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, their goal to go offense, their red zone offense. I mean, you have 2 running backs, you have a decent tight end, 2 decent blocking tight ends, and you can't get in the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
You rank dead last in the NFL in goal-to-go offense. I think some of that has to go on him as well, because they were so uncreative down there. Short yardage, giving the ball to Alan Lazard on an end around. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking. To me, they just got out coached again, and that's happened every time they get into a big game situation. They don't have the answers, and we can get into the other stuff defensively about the lack of discipline, but I'm just going to say they didn't do Rodgers that many favors down there either. I just saw nothing that looked really creative.
Yeah, I'm really conflicted on how to evaluate Matt LaFleur this season. First of all, first and goal was where the Packers offense went to die against the Lions this year. It's the same issue in Detroit. It was the opening drive tonight. They couldn't punch it in against this defense. As a whole, I think Matt LaFleur deserves a lot of credit for even getting this team to the position that it got to. He deserves a lot of blame for what happened before that and the fact that they needed to get there. But a lot of coaches could have lost their team, and you don't even get to this place. You can't ignore that. It was damn near miraculous that they even had a chance to win a game and go into the playoffs. They shouldn't have, but they did. With that said, Matt LaFleur was hired for the offense. He was hired to be this offensive guru from the Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan tree. And Brian Gutekunst put a lot of faith in Matt LaFleur offensively after losing Davante Adams this season to get that figured out. And as Matt LaFleur said after the game tonight, that there was hope that they could do that and that they could replace Davante Adams, but it never materialized. And when you are hired to be that offensive guru, the offense is on you. So team-wide, I think Matt LaFleur gets a lot of credit for the fact that this team did not quit. This team gave itself a chance that nobody saw coming. The offense, though, it's just I don't know if you guys have anything to add, but I'm conflicted on where to. I see good, I see bad. It kind of all meshes together.
Yeah, and Spoon, I'm glad you brought us back to this because that does bring up a great point. I mean, twice tonight they tried a jet sweep with Alan Lazard. If I'm going to try a jet sweep, I'm probably not going to use my slowest receiver.
4th and 1.
Yeah, and that's not even a shot at Lazard. That's just not his game.
No, I don't understand that. And to speak of LaFleur, I mean, I'm not letting him off the hook for waiting so long to replace Amon-Ra Rodgers, for all the stuff on the offensive line, failing in all those decisions on the offensive line. I think there were all kinds of mistakes made this year. The defense, it took them forever to figure out what to do on defense. And that all comes back to LaFleur. And he's got a lot to prove, I think, next year. I think I really do want to see him with a quarterback other than Aaron Rodgers to really judge him. But I was not impressed by this year. It was I thought there were a lot of poor coaching issues this year.
Do you give him credit that, when I say that a lot of teams would have wilted and quit 4-8 going into December?
Yeah, but they beat a bunch of crappy teams except for the Vikings.
And the Dolphins. The Dolphins are a playoff team.
Yeah, they're a playoff team, but they were coming off 3 straight losses. Their quarterback was concussed. I mean, it was. I'll give them credit. Okay, that was a decent win, but it wasn't like they were just on fire, just rolling over teams. I never saw them become. The only step they made was probably special teams with Keyshawn Nixon. And, well, I got to say defense. They made some headway on defense too. But I just never felt like they were on a great roll. I think that was kind of a mirage.
with that in mind, I mean, taking all of that into account, that, the fact that they did come back from 4-8 to be in this position, but then, Spoon, to your point that it might have been a mirage, and looking at the coaching decisions, this might be putting the cart before the horse a little bit, because that's a great point that you want to see him with someone besides Aaron Rodgers. But do you think Matt LaFleur is one of those offensive minds that's a better coordinator than a head coach?
I don't know. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, given he went, 13-3 for 3 straight seasons. I want to see what he does, how he fixes everything that went wrong, because there were so many things that went wrong, and it's on him now. I mean, there's a lot of things they got to fix.
What's the old adage in the NFL? You have to know how to lose. And, in his first 3 seasons, of course, I mean, they lost 3 games, but those were big games. Do you think this season is what had to teach Matt LaFleur how to lose?
Well, I think I give Matt LaFleur more credit than maybe Spoon for the team not quitting. And I get what Spoon's saying as far as it being a mirage. I mean, this team was not a team that was going to go into San Francisco and win next week.
Right.
It wasn't going to happen. So, and that's not what the expectations were going into the season. At best, this was going to be a wild card loss. This team was expected to compete. So, but I give him credit, not just for 3 straight 13-win seasons. I give him credit. I think it says something about a head coach when your team has no reason to believe and does go on a run. You can say whatever you want about the run it went on, and a lot of it's very valid. But 4 straight wins, when each one of them is lose and you're done, to come out and win games, there is that you. For me, I don't dismiss that. There's something there. As far as is he a better coordinator? To Spoon's point, I don't know that we've really seen his offense with Aaron Rodgers. It's hard to evaluate, because from the very first year, this has been a collaboration. This has been Matt LaFleur's offense mixed with Aaron Rodgers and what he likes to do. And the autonomy that Aaron Rodgers has at the line of scrimmage, we all know about. I don't think we have seen pure, unfiltered Matt LaFleur offense. So I, too, would like to see what that might look like before saying, what is the offense? And we've seen a lot of warts, obviously, and just said the reason, not being able to find anything to replace Devontae Adams except for in spurts. That's on Matt LaFleur's the offense, but it's not this offense has never been entirely Matt LaFleur's. It's on Aaron Rodgers too.
Do you hire someone to be a play caller?
No, that'll never happen.
But I mean, I feel like we've seen offensive coaches before who we think that, and then they hire a play caller and offense looks possibly better than ever.
I can't imagine Mike McCarthy did that after the 2014 season. He wanted to take more of a 30,000-foot view and dive into analytics and more of a team-wide approach. He wanted to get into special teams more after the fiasco of the NFC Championship game, really all season that year. The experiment lasted 12 games until Tom Clements took it back, or until Mike McCarthy took it back from Tom Clements. Could it ever happen? Yeah, there's a very small percent, barring unforeseen circumstances, there's a very small percentage, but I have a really hard time seeing Matt LaFleur ever doing that.
All of Spoon's play calls ideas were pretty good this year, so maybe they could hire Tom Silverstein as play caller.
They were.
I was pretty on, yeah.
You were on it.
Good year, yeah.
You did have a good year. Hope you made some bets on that. Okay, now let's flip to the defense. Spoon, I mean, as you were saying, a decent night and then wore down. I still kind of go back to I felt like this team was playing with, I wish there was another word than just aggressiveness, but that's what they were playing with for the past few weeks, and we didn't see that tonight necessarily. And maybe that was okay in the first half, but that's what seemed to be sort of like keeping them rolling the past few weeks. We saw Jair Alexander and Rasul Douglas play a lot off of the line tonight, which, maybe that was the plan. Clearly they did it. Just hearing from some of them in the locker room afterwards, they thought that maybe they might play closer to the line just because of how they've played guys these past couple of weeks. Spoon, I'll start with you. Did you see more of the did this defense revert back to who they were? I know you said that they played well enough to win, and you're right. They only gave up 20 points against a Lions offense that's been scoring a lot more. But still, they also gave up 20 points in a 20-16 win.
I don't believe that I thought the game plan was actually pretty good. I mean, I don't think they needed to be hyper aggressive with this group like they needed to be with Justin Jefferson. I thought that, they didn't, Goff didn't throw at Jair Alexander all day. The coverage was good there. Amon-Ra St. Brown did not kill them. I mean, he had a decent day, but this is 108 or 112 reception guy, and he didn't dominate. I thought where probably what separated was they just didn't make any big plays. Savage had a chance to turn the game around with that interception. I mean, that was right through his hands, and he was so lucky that didn't turn into a touchdown. But that's the kind of play they've been making, and they weren't making it. And then, Quay Walker had DeAndre Swift stopped on that key third down in their territory, and he missed the tackle. The one time was it Swift who split Douglas and Savage, just ran right between them. They just didn't make the plays when they were there to be had. But I don't have a problem with how they played the Lions. They shut them down for the first half. As Ryan said, I think, early on, if they just score a couple touchdowns, the Lions are probably folded up at halftime and start chucking it up. Then you start picking off Jared Goff. But they let him, the offense let him stay in the game, and it was just, in the end, I think Detroit's offensive line just wore the defensive line down.
Just going down the box score here, I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown was quiet. He had 6 catches for 49 yards on 9 targets. You'll take that.
You take that any day of the week.
Jared Goff, 85.9 passer rating. Now, to your point, and I completely agree with you, the lack of big plays. That was the difference in the defense tonight. They were covering everything save the Rudy Ford busted coverage for 43 yards against a receiver that wasn't Amon-Ra St. Brown. DeAndre Swift was their leading receiver. He had 7 catches for 61 yards. You'll take that. Jamal Williams had a good night. I mean, 16 carries, 72 yards, 4.5-yard average, 2 touchdowns. That Jamal Williams
he had a good day. Yeah.
Feeling. He tied Barry Sanders' franchise record with the 16 rushing touchdowns on the season. He crossed 1,000 yards for the first time in his career. He's had a good season, and good for Jamal Williams. But up and down the box score, this, and give the Packers secondary credit because they fixed a lot of issues to the point where, they got lucky not to give up the touchdown on the flea flicker, but the fact that the Lions had to pull out a flea flicker to hit something deep on them said something. They had to empty the kitchen sink because they weren't getting anything downfield otherwise, save for the Rudy Ford busted coverage, which has happened a few times. And that's been the one kind of hole that you've seen is Rudy Ford at safety covering deep. But they defensively, up and down the box score, you'll take that.
The worst thing that can happen to you against the Lions is that you don't score points, which everybody does, because then you just allow them to get behind that really good offensive line, powerful offensive line, and they just pound you. And, if the Packers are up, as I was saying, if they're up, let's just say 17-3 or whatever, 6 at halftime, Lions come out throwing. They're going to give up on the run game, and then you got them where you want them. Then you can start getting after Goff, and you don't have to worry about the run game quite as much. But you're in a close game like that, they're going to wear you down. And I think, I just don't have that big a problem with how the defense played, other than the stupid penalties by Douglas and Walker. Did it? I'm dying to know if those guys talked in the locker room.
Yes, and we're going to get into that. I just did want to clarify one thing. The main thing I meant when I was saying like it seemed like a lack of aggressiveness, it felt like over the past few weeks they were creating those big plays. I mean, you both said that there was a lack of like that big play, that turnover play. It felt like, at least to me, they were creating those moments. And I totally get what you're saying, that, you're putting teams into a tough position where they have to throw. It felt like the pass rush the past few weeks was sort of forcing those quick throws, those errant throws that were creating some of those moments where they could maybe get turnovers or get a really good incompletion. So, like, yes, box score shows, a decent performance. It just felt like they weren't creating those moments. And I get what you're saying. The Lions would have to give some of them too, but like, it felt like they were making those moments happen for them the past few weeks.
Well, Jared Goff closed this season with 9 straight games not allowing an interception. Mm-hmm. That's been a strength of theirs. They haven't been turning the ball over. So I don't think it's a real surprise that they didn't turn the ball over on the Lions, because for 2 months now they haven't been turning the ball over. I can what Spoon said. They got worn down on their defensive front late in the game by a very good Lions offensive line that is known to wear down defenses late in the game. I asked Kenny Clark about it after the game, and he thought that man-to-man, just lining up, they didn't get worn down. He said that they hit a couple well-timed against bad look traps on third down, which is true. They were wide on the second level, and they exposed them there. He thought it was more schematic than a physical execution thing. But whatever it may be, the Lions got rolling on the ground late in the game, which would not have happened if they took care of business in the first half, which they had an opportunity to do. This was not a game where they were going to get a lot of turnovers. The Lions just haven't been doing that. And this is a game where up and down the box score, the defensive execution, game plan, it was what it needed to be. The offense just wasn't able to put the game away and take advantage of opportunity after opportunity in the first half.
Spoon, to answer your question on Quay Walker and Rasul Douglas, Quay Walker did not talk. He was not in the locker room by the time we got in there, which was, it seems, I guess, telling that there's now a precedent for this, because after he was thrown out of the game versus the Buffalo Bills for an unsportsmanlike call when he pushed a Bills practice squad player, he did talk in the locker room afterwards. He wanted to talk. He asked to make a statement to the media. He was not in there tonight. Let me ask you a question, actually, on Quay Walker before we get into the Rasul Douglas part of it, too. I don't know about y'all, but from what I've seen and talked with Quay Walker this season, I would not ever think I would not ever describe him as a volatile guy. This is now twice now this has happened. Versus the Bills, a practice squad player. For tonight, he pushed back at an athletic trainer who was checking on DeAndre Swift. Someone, Ryan Clark on Twitter, made a good point that was his Georgia teammate, and the athletic trainer pushed Quay Walker out of the way as Quay Walker was checking on Swift. But still, you can't push back at somebody else, especially somebody who's not in a helmet, especially after this week with DeMar Hamlin. Is this something that is a sign of immaturity that can be grown out of, or is this a risk you take with Quay Walker on the field?
Spoon, did you read those Matt LaFleur lips on the camera at home?
He said, play smart.
Yeah.
Oh, he might have dropped an F-bomb there too.
Yeah. So in both instances, someone put their hands on Quay Walker, and he reacted to someone putting their hands on him. I don't know what that's about, but he's got to figure that out. He has to get over that. Or, I don't know if there's an anger management thing that needs to be taken care of, or if it's, something about getting their hands on him, he reacts. And I don't know if that's a Georgia thing or whatever it is. I don't think he's a bad person. I think it can be controlled, but they're going to have to deal with it. It's something they're going to have to deal with in the offseason, because like LaFleur said, he's never seen a guy get kicked out of 2 games, in a season. And the guy's a very promising player, and at least he's engaging when we talk to him. I don't know anything about him off the field other than that. But yeah, they got to get that. Something needs to be done.
Who's usually the person that gets caught in a scrum?
This is always the second guy.
Always.
Yeah, well, and Devontae Wyatt coming over there was really stupid too. I mean, and he goes and pushes the guy. I don't know if you guys saw that, but he came over and pushed the trainer too, because the trainer had said something to Walker, and Wyatt gave him a little shove too. So I don't know.
No matter what, when there's a trainer on the field tending to an injured player, you get out of the way.
Yeah.
Period.
I mean, what if it's an official who's pulling you off the pile and you go and shove him? You know, it's the same thing.
Yep.
Look and see who's touching you, or get over it.
Or turn that switch off as soon as you hear the whistle.
Right. And
I don't know, that's easier said than done.
It's unfortunate. I mean, Quay Walker was bawling on his way into the tunnel, and I'm sure he felt horrible about it. But he's got to, it's something he's got to take accountability for.
I mean, yeah, because as you were saying, he was having such a good night and appears to be a very promising player. We'll see what kind of changes he might take in the offseason to address that. The other penalty, and that moved the Lions down into position, and they scored a touchdown to cap that drive. Right before the half, Rasul Douglas gets an unsportsmanlike call, and that moves the Lions down into a chip shot field goal, and that's what makes it a close game at half. He did talk. He talked twice, actually, to two different scrums. He said, again, that this is coming from Rasul Douglas's perspective, but he said that he was pushed. So he went in to move the ball because the Packers had called a timeout, and the Lions were going to still kick it and essentially just get a free kick because the timeout had already been called. And he said, I'm not going to let a team get a free kick, especially in Lambeau in January. Like, you're not going to get a warm-up kick. We had already called timeout. I was going to move the ball. I thought originally he got the flag for touching the ball, but when he got the flag because he pushed a guy.
Oh.
When he moved the ball, a Lions player pushed him, and he said, I pushed back. Twitter told me he swung. That's a little different, but he said, Lions guy pushed me, I pushed back. The official threw the flag and said, I have to get the retaliation.
Second guy.
Yeah.
The point is, it moved the Lions into a chip shot field goal.
First of all, who cares if the guy gets a try? I've seen more guys miss after the second time. They hit it the first time and then they miss the second time. That's just asking for trouble to go up there and whatever. It's not worth it. That's going to cause some problem if you go in there and walk right between the two lines and try to grab the ball. I'm sorry, I don't buy that one. I understand what he's saying, but I don't buy that being necessary.
You want another criticism of the defense? And there aren't a lot because this game's not on them. But it's 2 straight years now to close out game at Lambeau Field where at the end of the game, a last-ditch effort to just give your offense another chance.
Right.
They haven't been able to get the stop.
Right.
They happened just like last year against the 49ers. So that was the one drive at the very end when they weren't dominant. The only drive of the game. Same type of thing tonight. They had a chance at the end to make a play after they made a lot of plays in this game, and they weren't able to do it again. I'm not saying it would have mattered on the scoreboard because I don't know that the offense would have done anything with it, but we'll never know that.
That's the time, Kassidy, where they should have been up on every receiver, jamming the crap out of them. To me, it looked like they were more worried about the ball being thrown over their head for a touchdown. Who cares? At that point, you got to stop the first down.
The other time, 5 seconds to go in the first half on the fringe of field goal range where they need about 5 yards and they have a timeout. Playing 6 to 8 yards off the line of scrimmage there, you press man and go cover 2 over the top to protect deep. And you know if they need 5 yards, you give them free 5 yards, timeout in 5 seconds. That's exactly what they did.
Right.
That football is a big part of this game. That was the one time where we talk about the physicality.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one time to me that really just stood out as what are you doing schematically there?
They played scared. Yeah.
Let's give the Lions some credit though on that last drive. That was one of the sickest play calls in that situation that we've seen.
That was a great call. The lateral.
Yeah, perfectly executed, called, perfectly prepared, executed, called, everything. Great play.
Exactly the kind of play the Packers needed to like jumpstart themselves, and they never had it.
Yeah. Speaking of jumpstart, let's just kind of, as we wrap this up for tonight's game, Keyshawn Nixon has been such a spark for this team the past few weeks, and he wasn't tonight. Was that the Lions? Was that the Packers protection? Was that Nixon? Gosh, you've got the box score. I don't think he brought anything out past the 25.
It's really hard to have explosive kickoff returns every week in this.
Right. Exactly.
That's why Spoon and I said he's not going to have a touchdown this season, not because we didn't think Keyshawn Nixon was good. Yeah. We have eyes. We see that. It's really hard to do that.
So he's a victim of his own hype tonight.
I think there's no question that the Lions schematically were trying to kick the ball away from him. The first kickoff of the game, they popped it up to the 10-yard line. That's what if they'd won this week, that's what San Francisco would have done. The book is out on Keyshawn Nixon, and it did positively affect the team and the field position. I mean, they still got better field position than the 25 a lot of the time tonight. That's the sacrifice you make when you're trying to kick away from an explosive return guy. You're going to sacrifice some field position to try to not let him take it to the house. So I don't think that, I think it's clear that it worked. But to your point, Cass, the kickoff returns tonight, 4 for 79. That's 19.8 yards. I think he might have crossed 1,000 yards of kick returns on the season, having only done it a little bit. I think it was like 930 coming in, but that's impressive. Punt returns, he was 4 for 38 for 9.5, which is a decent night of the office.
That's fine. He took some wicked hits out there too.
Yeah. He was okay.
But you're exactly right. You're not going to have huge games like that every single week. There's going to be a week when, the special teams beats you. And I think the Lions had a good plan. They were not going to let him beat them, and rightly so. I think they missed his contribution. Like they could have used that, his 100-yard touchdown more today than last week against the Vikings. But either way, it just didn't happen.
And I know this might be putting the cart before the horse a little bit because we don't know if Mason Crosby will even be back next year. But do you have where the average, the Lions' average starting position?
Mason Crosby, I don't. Mason Crosby told me after the game that he does indeed want to come back and kick for a 17th year. He felt as good as at the end of the season as he's felt in a long time. It showed. I mean, he got the bad bounce on the 53-yard doink, but other than that, he gets the 56-yarder where he gets the good bounce on the doink against the Vikings. He hit a 49-yarder. He hit a 48-yarder in these conditions, and Michael Badgley, the Lions kicker, showed you that ain't easy because he missed a 46-yarder. It's not easy to do. Mm-hmm. Mason Crosby made it very clear he wants to come back.
So let's say he is back. I'm trying to think of where the Lions kind of their average starting position was. It felt like they had decent starting position on all of their kickoff returns. I know that last week the Packers pulled up Rami Zamad because they wanted the kickoffs to go out of the end zone, and Mason Crosby didn't do that tonight. They have signed, they had brought Amendola onto the practice squad. Were you expecting Spoon maybe to see Amendola tonight, to see him elevated to kick off tonight?
I think I figured it depended on what they needed on their roster, the game day roster, and also how he kicked. I have no idea how he kicked in practice. Mm-hmm. we don't get to see that. So maybe he wasn't that great. I don't know.
So Crosby had 1 touchback and then 4 kickoff returns.
Yeah, that's an area they got to do better at.
Yeah.
And the kickoff returners averaged 24 and 23, respectively. Keyshawn Nixon did go over 1,000 yards for kickoff return yards.
It's impressive.
Look that up. He ended with 1,009.
That's what I thought.
So
9:30 coming in.
I know that we're going to get a lot more into this after exit interviews and after locker room clean out, but just while we're on the subject of Keyshawn Nixon, he is one of several guys that we don't know contract-wise if they'll be back next year. Spoon, I'm going to start with you. If you're the Green Bay Packers and you're Brian Gutekunst, who are the 3 most important guys that you're wooing this week over the next couple of weeks?
Well, you took care of the most important guy, and that was Elton Jenkins. No question, he was number 1, priority number 1, 2, and probably 3 and 4 as well. After that, I would talk to Alan Lazard, but I think he's going to want to go to free agency. I don't think I'd go crazy in what I was offering him. Well, I just looked at the list, and now I'm kind of drawing blanks on who else is a free agent. Tomlin is a free agent. I don't think I'd break the bank for him. Nyman's a restricted free agent. You'd have to make a tender on him. I guess I probably would. Who else am I forgetting?
Is Amos one?
Yes, Adrian Amos is. I would pass.
Aaron Jones has an opt-out.
Yeah, Aaron Jones you got to keep. You got to find a way to keep
I agree.
him. I don't care, even with the injury, I'd overpay him.
You're saying you'd pass on Adrian Amos?
Yes. I mean, you got to start rebuilding that safety position. And
To be clear, Aaron Jones is still under contract. It's
Right.
just they could opt out of it if they want. I
Right.
completely agree with you, Spoon. Robert Tonyan told me that he definitely wants to be back. He doesn't know how the Packers feel. Randall Cobb didn't want to answer the question when I asked him after the game.
Well, he's not coming back. We know that.
Don't blame him. He was
Yeah.
fresh off the field. Don't blame it at all. I asked, and he was too fresh.
Nixon signed a 1-year contract. So, I mean, is he a guy you have to keep?
He's priority number 1 now of all those guys. I mean, it's of all the free agents, Keyshawn Nixon is, to me, the makes the most sense, is a no-brainer. Bring him back. You found something finally as a return specialist. You got to keep him.
You agree, Spoon?
I found out, I found out this week. I just happened to be talking to somebody from another team, and they offered more money than the Packers did, and he came because of Bisaccia.
Yeah.
And it was a great decision on his part. Look what it did for him. I don't think that means he's necessarily coming back, but now he can cash in. Someone's going to pay him.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Packers or someone else. So my point being, he kind of took less money to build up his career, and now it's time to cash in, so I don't know how that'll go. That'll be interesting, but they need to re-sign him. Yeah.
I think if I was making a list of my top 3 as well, I'd put Keyshawn Nixon number 1, because that's been your Achilles heel the past few years, and you finally fixed it. You don't let that work out.
For a decade.
The number one thing is Rodgers, of course.
Right.
They have to make that decision, and they got to make it. I mean, there's no hurry in it, but if they're going to trade him, they got to start making talks during the combine and figure out, or if he's going to retire. But if it turns into a little bit of a fight, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. If he decides he wants to play and they decide they don't want him.
And Aaron Rodgers, we'll get it. There's a whole offseason for this, but just a quick rundown of the bullet points. Spoon, Aaron Rodgers said that he would understand. He said there's a feeling that they might want to go young at quarterback, and that he would understand if they do. That's what he said. He said that the $59 million he's guaranteed to play next season would not be something that would preclude him from retiring this season. He said, yes, I could definitely walk away from that.
I don't know.
Wish I was in that position. That'd be nice, but
for a guy that wants to buy a sports franchise, I don't know if he can actually walk away from 59. It sounds nice when he's at the podium. That was Pete that asked him the question.
I'm just telling you what he said. I'm just saying.
If you're asking me for a prediction, I would say that they're going to find a place where he's wanted, where, okay, this is where we can deal you. And it's up to you. Do you want to go or not? I think they have to move on. It's time. I think it'd be good for him. I think it'd be good for the Packers if he wants to finish in San Francisco or Carolina or Houston, or I forgot all the different places that have been talked about. Pittsburgh. I don't know. I think it's time for them to explore it. The salary cap thing is just too much.
It was interesting that Jameis Williams approached Aaron Rodgers on the field after the game, asked him for Aaron Rodgers' jersey, and Aaron Rodgers has given his jersey in the past. It's not like he doesn't do that, but he said no. And asked afterward why he said no. He said, you want to keep some, he wants to keep certain jerseys that are special to him or could be special to him. And he was asked what would make this one special, and he kind of paused and said, night game, Lambeau Field. He didn't say because it might be my last time. But if he's not thinking that, he's not keeping the jersey for no reason. If he doesn't think it's a legitimate possibility, he's not keeping the jersey for no reason, right? He's had plenty of night games at Lambeau Field.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely a possibility that this was his last game at Lambeau Field. That was in his mind. He is absolutely a possibility in his mind. We'll just
absolutely, yeah.
He's out,
or at least quite possibly his last game at Lambeau as a Packer.
Right.
Because their 2023 opponents have come out, right, Spoon?
Yes, they play the Raiders next year.
Las Vegas, one of the only cities I haven't been to
in your life.
Yep,
it's fun.
I'll let you all decipher how excited I am for that.
Any others, Spoon? I know you have a story of this on PackersNews.com, but any opponents that stood out to you? Most of them are known, but some of them is just the seeding, right, and how you.
Well, yeah. What happened was, by falling into third place, they all of a sudden play the Rams instead of Seattle. They'll play the Giants instead of the Cowboys. What was the other? They'll play Pittsburgh instead of Baltimore. I mean, it wasn't a huge change by losing that game, but it meant a little. It meant a little something. Their schedule doesn't seem daunting next year. Yeah. But you can't make anything out of the schedule because you have no idea.
Comes out.
Their schedule didn't seem daunting this year.
Yeah, I mean, Philadelphia didn't seem like it was going to be an unwinnable game at the time.
Neither did Washington.
Yeah, or Washington.
Neither did Detroit.
Neither did Detroit.
Right. Hey, I'll tell you what. Detroit, to me, is the favorite next year to win the division. They're good, and they've got the number 6 pick in the draft and the number 18. They're still gathering, using picks from that Stafford trade.
Mm-hmm.
So they're in pretty good shape, and then they get healthy Jameson Williams back. Shoot, look out for those guys.
Here's another thing that Aaron Rodgers said tonight. He was asked how close this team was. He said a couple players away. And he said some of the guys, because this is a team, unlike more than any Packers team in recent memory, this is a team that got a lot of young contributions this year. He said some of those guys might be able to develop from here into those roles. He said they're a couple players away, and he ain't wrong. This is not a team that's one player away. There's a lot of work to do for Brian Gutekunst this offseason.
No, but they got a good base with this draft class.
They did.
To be a pretty good draft class. And they've got so many key guys signed: Kenny Clark, Elton Jenkins, Campbell, Rashawn Gary, they'll have back.
Mm-hmm.
They've got
Do you feel better about having Darnell Savage back after his past couple of weeks?
Not after today. I mean, he was okay, but I don't know. Next year he's gotta be a lot better. They have to. I mean, he's guaranteed $7 million next year. He's on the roster, so he's going to have to be something next year. But they got Alexander. I forgot to mention him. He's under contract. They have their very best players. They're not going to lose their best players because of free agency next year. So that's something to be said for that. Well,
next year starts tomorrow. And the Packers will start building for the 2023 season. Already. It's here already.
It's fast.
Guys, I know we'll do another podcast after exit interviews, after locker clean out, after kind of, the dust really settles.
Or will have his season ending on Wednesday or something.
Sounds like Brian Gutekunst might talk this week too. Keep an eye out for that.
So we'll kind of let the dust settle, and then we'll come back for a final wrap up on the 2022 season. But, we haven't done this in a while, so let's sign off with this tonight. I'll give you your final 60 seconds. Ryan, go.
Well, I still have 2 stories to write, and it's 1 a.m., so that's my final 60 seconds.
Okay, go do that. Spoon, your final 60 seconds. Go.
My final 60 seconds, pretty much, as I said, the season, it was not a surprise to me that they lost. I thought they would win, but I wasn't going to be shocked that they lost. And the season ended pretty much the way it went the entire year. It was just one of those years. And, now they're at sort of a crossroads, and they got to figure out, they got a salary cap to take care of and all of that. But anyway, it was an enjoyable year, and I enjoyed the podcast and blogs and everything else. So thanks for having me on the podcast and being a great host and partners. So I look forward to continuing on.
I should thank you. I shouldn't be such a curmudgeon. I should thank you guys, but also the readers, the listeners. Thank you. Please read my 2 stories tomorrow. Right? Because I'm going to be a zombie. So I hope that you enjoy them, and I hope that they're, coherent and literate. But all jokes aside, we do this for you guys, and we appreciate the following.
Yes, thank you for reading, thank you for watching, thank you for listening. That's what makes this worthwhile. So guys, thank you for joining me as always, and for the final time this 2022 season, this has been the Green 19 podcast from JS Online and PackersNews.com.